Upon acquiring a Steam Deck, I decided to give Sleeping Dogs a playthrough for the first time ever, as I had a huge back catalogue that had grown since puberty. Upon completing Sleeping Dogs, it dawned on me what a bloody idiot I'd been all these years, because Sleeping Dogs is one of those underrated cult classics that leaves an impression upon you, and you struggle to understand why it didn't meet the expectations it should have, and why a sequel never came to be. So in today's review, Reggie is gonna go all retro on you, not just to share his experience with this utterly blinding game, but also explore what future, if any, there is for this franchise. So grab yourself some nunchucks and let's have a chat. Sleeping Dogs is a proper gang type game that released back in 2012, a year before GTA 5 came out, but it no doubt drew comparisons to that beer moth upon release. PC Gamer shockingly gave it a 74%, saying that Sleeping Dogs had, and I quote, a messy story and horrible characters get in the way of decent, violent action in a scintillating open city. I can only assume PC Gamer was sucking on AAA batteries, because they are spouting total nonsense here. In fact, the story of Sleeping Dogs is one that treats you as a proper adult. It holds no punches, and the twists and turns come thick and fast. In it, you play Wei Shen, an undercover cop who is also playing both sides of the same coin by working his way up in the Triads to expose them. And so the story shows the strain on relationships around you as the loyalty gets tested, and you start to even see the good in these gang members' fates who are merely trying to break free from the troubles in their life. Too bloody right, lads, because being a proper gangster, let me tell you, it's the pinnacle of life. And if I ever saw Wei Shen, I'd give him a proper good pasting, because snitches, they get stitches. As you progress on your journey, you'll get introduced to all sorts of hard nut blokes who know how to handle themselves, until you reach the upper echelons of the criminal underworld, where the stakes, they're bloody high, people. Now, the story is scripted and you don't have a choice in how it plays out, but it's riveting stuff, and my only real criticism comes in the flow of how cutscenes are done. It feels a bit stop-start, and for no reason really, when they should just combine some scenes into one, because I don't need to travel to a location just for another cutscene to begin again. It might sound minor, but for me, it slowed the story down in the middle parts of the game. After playing 30 minutes of Sleeping Dogs, you'll see yourself as a proper Bruce Lee character, as the combat, it's slick and tight, and honest to God, my Cockney gamer gang, I don't think there is a better beat-em-up type game that tops the fluidity and sheer punchiness of the combat on display here, which includes games like Spider-Man, Batman and Shadow of Mordor. Don't get me wrong, they are great in their own way, but the way you're able to pull combos as enemies look to shank you, only to then use the environment for maximum damage, is nothing short of sheer brutalness. The reversals and counters in particular are standout, and you do feel like you're a Will Smith on stage, a force of nature where no one can stop you giving people a bloody good slap. In comparison to GTA, it definitely feels more authentic in its combat. It's not as silly, because the blood, gore and just feral nature of the fights makes this a proper adult game, one to get the boys around and just take turns shooting the shit. Once you become a master of your fists, you'll then have the ability for gun usage, which takes lead straight out of a John Woo movie, where it has that Max Payne style slow-mo mechanic as you dive over tables or walls to pop off headshots from all over the gaff. Again, Sleeping Dogs wins this round over GTA. The city itself is alive with plenty to do, and driving feels consistent if a little tiresome. I will say the map feels much smaller than anything in GTA, and indeed I would argue that it's pretty boring to navigate in comparison, but once you head over to a karaoke bar, all can be forgiven. The graphics on the other hand do help bring Hong Kong to life, and what surprised me most is that even as a 10-year-old game, Sleeping Dogs still feels polished and sharp. Textures are very good, offering crisp details with road surfaces, cars and buildings look the business. The facial animations, that's what she said, they still look good, and the fights are brutal as blood splatters on the ground. In terms of the fight animations, everything feels solid and connected, and what I mean by that is that you don't see clipping where there is a multitude of different fight moves going on. It feels Matrix-esque at times, and because of that, it's such a satisfying experience. In fact, animations across the board are bloody good, with even the walking and running having some swagger to them, with cutscenes playing out with great acting. Obviously with a 10-year-old game, you do need to temper some expectations, but on a rainy night in Hong Kong, it looks glorious. And as said, playing this on a Steam Deck is nothing short of amazing experience, as the 800p screen is filled with detail and vibrancy, all running at a buttery smooth 60 frames a second. Sound is also glorious, with the effects providing some truly disturbing moments, in particular the swipe of a blade as it tears into the meaty flesh of a Triad gang member is rather delicious, but also rather delicious is the sheer brutality of fights in the form of screams as enemies are raised onto meat hooks, or how punches land with aplomb and the crackle of bones breaking can be heard. Oh, it's fantastic. In addition to the sound effects, we also have a great radio soundtrack. Now, I can't play it here for license reasons, but I do love the authenticity. It's not going to be a GTA killer, of course, but it feels right at home, and the radio DJs again offer some real insights into the living world of Hong Kong. I've already mentioned the great voice acting on top, but the other call out here is the general public. My favourite would be listening to the women outside your apartment complaining to each other, usually about the men in their life. Men, do better please. As for gunplay, they pack a proper punch, and in slow-mo mode, the bullets hitting flesh or materials such as wood or metal really come to life. Cars, well, they're probably the worst sounding part of the game for me, as they feel a bit flat, and crashes, they sound a bit exaggerated, but all in all, people, you cannot complain about what is on offer here. So here it is then, a great story with sublime combat and a city that is enjoyable to explore as you wander about. So why wasn't Sleeping Dogs a huge success? Well, there is no definitive answer here, but Square Enix at the time was suffering some financial losses, and with that, it placed some big expectations on what Sleeping Dogs should sell. Whilst it did shift 1.5 million copies within the first few months of release, it didn't come close to being the GTA companion that execs wanted it to be, and ultimately it under-delivered. Critical reception was actually pretty decent, except for the nonsense from PC Gamer, so it's still a bit of a mystery as to why you lovely people didn't go for it. My personal view is that gamers at the time were feeling a bit fatigued in the genre, and perhaps didn't feel the need to give it a try with GTA 5 right around the corner and GTA 4 keeping people busy. I honestly feel if Sleeping Dogs was released in the last 5 years, it would have been a grand slam hit. But get your wank socks ready, people, because this is a point for a mass debate in the comments section below. As for a possible sequel, well, sadly, it's not looking good. Sleeping Dogs itself always had a troubled development, changing name throughout its life, and the attempts at creating spin-offs never actually took off. There was talk of an MMO called Triad Wars, but again, a lack of interest killed the project off before it even began. There was also talk of a sequel playing out the same story, but from the perspective of a different character. But when you have Final Fantasy to feed and a franchise that arguably is going to guarantee you some true revenue returns, it perhaps makes sense as to why Sleeping Dogs got kicked to the curb. But not all is lost, my pedigree chums, because I look at a game like Shenmue 3 and become slightly moist in my pants at the way it came to be. Here we have a franchise seemingly dead from the Dreamcast days, with no hope of it ever seeing the light of day. But on that fateful day at E3, we witnessed something truly spectacular.
Dude, this is a crazy conference.
Shenmue 3, by sheer fan love, have found a way back. So who knows, because whilst it seems unlikely, I wouldn't say it's impossible. Sleeping Dogs then is an underrated game that the world ignored, but for those that have had the honour of playing it, you know exactly why it's such a superb game, and that's what makes Reggie and the boys so sad to give this review, because far too often we've seen utter tripe get released, and dare I say, 10 years ago I think demands were higher from gamers and we were far more critical as a bunch of people. But in a world of digital gaming where Game Pass subscriptions are the norm, the pick up and play nature of gaming has perhaps given publishers and developers a reason to focus more on quantity than quality, which is why we may not see a Sleeping Dogs sequel ever grace our grubby mitts again. However, if you do want to relive a moment of gaming gold, then look no further than Sleeping Dogs. Until next time, people, love to you all, Reggie out.